Yes, welcome to another week here at Cannabis News. It's February 4th, 2019. I'm your host, Joe Klare. It's presented as always by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. Click the video tab to find the show. You can also search the Marijuana Times on YouTube and Vimeo and Apple Podcasts. That last one if you want the audio-only version of the show. Today we're talking about stories in Minnesota, also in California, and family has sued law enforcement, among other people in Georgia, over the way that one of their loved ones was treated in custody, a loved one who died in custody, being in there on a marijuana charge. We'll talk about all that coming up. But first, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Grow safe and poison-free. Be regulatory compliant in the state that you're growing in. Don't use harmful pesticides and chemicals on your grow. Do all of these things with Natureside, nature-side.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. They're awesome. Go check them out. Side is spelled C-I-D-E. For those of you looking for the website. This first story from marijuanatimes.org by yours truly. The battle over marijuana legalization in Minnesota. I was able to talk with Laura Mon Ginsberg, who is the Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation campaign co-manager. She said, quote, "We started Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation because we believe now is the time to have substantive, collaborative, inclusive conversations that help shape what marijuana legalization and policy look like in Minnesota." Minnesota is not a ballot petition state. Voters can't bring issues to other voters, to the voters of the state via ballot. It has to go through the legislature. So that's what they're working on in Minnesota. Bills have been introduced in the Minnesota State House for adult use legalization. A lot remains to be seen. As I said the other day when I talked about the story, obviously they're confident in Minnesota, at the very least, of getting the ball rolling as far as education and discussion and all of that. There's a long way to go. In states like Minnesota and other states, a lot has to be slogged through. You see what happens in New Jersey. New Jersey, 2 years ago, we were talking about, Phil Murphy's running for governor and he's for legalization, so if he wins, New Jersey's going to be a legalization state. And then Phil Murphy did win governor in New Jersey. And throughout 2018, we talked about New Jersey being closer and closer to legalizing adult use cannabis. And here we are in February of 2019. And we're still talking about it, and there's still heavy problems now more than a year after Phil Murphy took office. So even when it's done, it's not done. Everybody's on board. It doesn't matter if everybody's on board because there's not enough people on board, apparently. And they're in the process of getting those people to step up in Minnesota. So if you're in Minnesota, obviously now is the time to contact your legislators and let them know you're in favor of adult use legalization. Make your voice heard, as they say. And also check out Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation. They have a Facebook. They have a website. You learn a lot. Just little things like that. Joining the Facebook of an activist group in your state. You learn things that you need to know if you would like to get involved in activism. And there's also people there you can contact to get involved in activism as well. Somebody you can donate to. All sorts of things. Just find those groups, those local groups in your area if you're looking to get involved in marijuana law reform. This next story from LATimes.com. Lawmakers want to cut California's pot taxes to help lagging legal market. This is a story we've talked about quite a few times here on the show, and I've also written about it at marijuanatimes.org several times as well. Basically, the high taxes and the restrictive regulations in California have I was going to say retarded the legal market, but you really can't use that word anymore. Even though it's accurate in this case, it's not talking about mentally challenged people. It's talking about the restriction of the possible growth on the legal marijuana market in California, which has the potential to be incredible for obvious reasons. There's a lot of people in California. There's a lot of people in California who like cannabis, so they start opening stores in California to sell these people cannabis. They're going to sell a lot of cannabis. In a market the size of California, that's untold billions upon billions of dollars. But of course, the growth of their market has been restricted, I guess is the word I have to use, restricted. But you get what I'm saying. It's been lessened from what it could have been because of the restrictive regulations. It's been constricted. I'm sorry, I feel like retarded is the right word, but again, I can't, and it has negative connotations in other places, but I'm not using it in that context. I'm using it in another context. So maybe it's okay. I don't know anymore. I really don't know anymore. It's 2019. I don't know what I can say on the internet. But you get what I'm saying. I got mired down. That took 2 minutes. That totally brought the whole show to a halt for a full 2 minutes. It's nuts. Anyway, frustrated. The California's licensed marijuana industry is struggling to compete against the black market. A group of state officials is pressing to slash taxes on legal pot shops and growers. Lawmakers acknowledged that a year after the state began issuing licenses for growing and selling marijuana for recreational purposes, the legal market has been stunted by red tape. Stunted, that's the word I'm looking for. Oh, stunted. Although, no, I'm not even getting into that. Why stunted could be problematic. Or why problematic is problematic. I'm moving on. It's been stunted by red tape, the refusal of cities to allow pot businesses, and the burden of paying state and local taxes. State Treasurer Fiona Ma and 5 legislators proposed a bill that would cut the state excise tax on marijuana sales from 15% to 11% for 3 years and suspend the cultivation tax of $148 per pound. During that period, the black market continues to undercut businesses that are complying with state regulations and doing things the right way, said Assemblyman Rob Bonta of Alameda, the primary author of the measure. The tax cut, he said, will help, quote, keep customers at licensed businesses and help ensure the regulated market survives and thrives. It's a point I've made over and over again. You can't start out with the high regulations and then the restrictions and the high taxes because you're not allowing a business, an industry to grow. And a lot of those people who are interested in that industry, they'll be turned off from the industry because they can't afford it. And they can't afford to get into it. They'll move on to other things. They'll make investments in other areas. Or they'll invest and get in over their head where they shouldn't in the marijuana industry and not be able to handle it. And their company will fold and they'll lose all their money. And all this investment that people want to put in when the market opens will be wasted because it's so heavily regulated and restricted. And now a year later, they're saying, oh, well, maybe we should back off of it some. Well, that's great. But what about all the businesses that went under in California that wouldn't have if they had been able to compete a little bit easier? What happens to all that investment money that's gone or moved elsewhere because people were turned away from the industry or turned off by the industry? What happens to all those people? You start small and expand out. You don't start heavily. We had this discussion again the other day. New Zealand, they're saying, well, we need to maximum regulation and restriction, and then we'll back off from there. That is going to destroy much of the potential legal industry will have wherever that's tried. Of course, it stems from a couple of things. One, that marijuana is a dangerous substance that needs to be heavily regulated and restricted. That is just not so. It's treated like nuclear waste. We have to like I said, in New York, 171 pages for a marijuana legalization law. They have to regulate and restrict and tax every possible contingency and every turn on the road, and it's unnecessary to do that. The other fallacy that comes that leads to this, we must heavily regulate marijuana, is this. God, I don't even know how to put it. I'm having trouble with words today and sentences. That's not a good thing for a broadcaster, for a video broadcaster. But this notion that that marijuana legalization is going to unleash the substance called marijuana onto the public. So we really have to stop and think about this before we do this because, there's no marijuana now, but there will be marijuana after legalization. So we really need to make sure we do it right before we even allow this out of the bag. That's not the circumstances we live in. Marijuana is already here. Legalization doesn't unleash marijuana, this so-called dangerous substance that needs to be regulated, onto the market. It's already here. Everybody can find it if they want to find it, legally or illegally. So I'll keep saying it. If you want to legalize marijuana, you want the industry to have any chance of encroaching on the black market and the dominance that the black market has built up over decades of being the only market there was, you got to start low. Regulations, taxes, restrictions, all that. It's be very simple. Again, I'm being a dead horse here, but Oklahoma. Look at Oklahoma. They did it. No one else can do it. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. Nobody else can figure it out. But somehow, Oklahoma did. I don't know why. It's crazy. It's crazy. This last story out of Georgia, Fox 5, Atlanta. Now, this story I'm about to play, we'll play some of the video of the story. But in the story, they mentioned that the person who was in jail, that all this event revolves around, was there for a minor marijuana charge. In the written portion, or the written version, rather, of this story, they're a little bit more specific. Howard was on probation from a drunk driving arrest when he tested positive for marijuana. He and his girlfriend had shared a marijuana cookie on Valentine's Day. He had never been in trouble with law enforcement before. So that's what led to him. And I guess the marijuana cookie story comes, of course, from him or his family or whatever. So, it is what it is. But if that's true, then this guy was just in here for violating his probation for eating a marijuana cookie, which led to this.
A lawsuit accuses Gwinnett County jail staff of using, quote, unnecessary and excessive force on a 23-year-old man who it turns out was suffering a massive seizure. Instead of calling 911, deputies restrained a clearly suffering Chris Howard and eventually left him in a cell alone.
Fox 5 I-Team reporter Randy Travis first broke the story. He's back now with the night's new developments. Randy?
Yeah, Tom and Marissa, Howard's father points the finger at the jail's medical staff and the rapid response team, accusing both of ignoring standard practices on how to handle someone suffering a seizure. Chris Howard arrived at the Gwinnett County Jail in February 2017 on a simple marijuana charge, then suffered this seizure while waiting in a holding cell. According to a lawsuit filed by his father, the jail's medical staff and the rapid response team made crucial mistakes that likely led to his slow and painful death.
They didn't do what they were supposed to. I mean, I think they should have maybe called the EMTs when he had his first seizure.
The jail's surveillance video seems to show Chris suffering from multiple seizures, but the lawsuit claims it was one seizure that actually lasted at least 12 minutes. Instead of calling 911, you can see the jail's rapid response team holding down Howard.
They basically come in and they restrain him because he's having a seizure. And then they don't really do much after that until they do decide to do something, and even that thing that they decided to do is not the thing that they were supposed to do.
Eventually handcuffing and putting him into a restraint chair. Later telling internal affairs investigators it was for his own safety.
Because he was being really aggressive.
But the sheriff's professional standards unit pushed back at the deputy's claims that medical staff would have been in danger if they had not handcuffed Howard.
You knew it wasn't fighting. You knew it was a medical state of mind. Okay.
According to the internal affairs file, nurses told deputies to take Howard directly to the jail clinic. But instead, the rapid response team decided to put him in this observation cell, where he was only occasionally observed during an agonizing stay lasting more than a half hour.
So, then against the advice of the nurses who say take him to the clinic, they're still not to the level of taking him to a hospital. Take him to the clinic, the rapid response team, whatever that means. Why aren't there just there's nurses? If there's nurses there, why aren't they the rapid response team? Why is there another team? And then there's nurses to give them advice. Anyway, the system didn't work because they decided to put him in an observation room where he was occasionally observed, just every once in a while. And of course, he goes through agony while being occasionally observed.
Eventually, a nurse discovered Howard and insisted again he be moved to the medical unit. On the way there, Howard would go into cardiac arrest.
Still insisting, get him to the clinic. And when they finally do decide to do it, it's too late because he has a heart attack on the way.
When he finally did reach the hospital, Chris Howard would be pronounced dead.
Why would someone watch him begging for his life, crawling up the door, crawling up the side of the cell?
Well, I guess that's the thing. They weren't watching. They decided that observation cell was where he should be so they could observe him, and then they proceeded to only occasionally observe him. So it's probably hard for someone to stand there and watch someone go through that. I guess that's why they didn't. I don't know.
How could someone watch that happen and not feel like I want to help them?
Sheriff Butch Conway could not comment on pending litigation, but did say Chris's death was a tragic loss, and I feel for the Howard family. In addition to Sheriff Conway and the rapid response team, the Howard family is also suing Correct Care Solutions, the private company that provides medical services here at the jail. According to the lawsuit, anyone suffering a seizure lasting 5 minutes should immediately be sent not to a clinic, but to the hospital.
The person and their brain are being put under a high stress situation, and when it goes into an extended amount of time, which is over 5 minutes, they're at a higher risk for a multitude of things.
Chris Howard did not have epilepsy. He suffered from a rare genetic disease that can send blood sugars plummeting. While the Epilepsy Foundation of Georgia would not comment specifically on the Howard case, program coordinator Kiana Lawrence says all convulsive seizures should be treated the same. In fact, she pushes that when speaking to law enforcement groups. Call 911. Don't restrain. Stay calm. Stay with them.
So I'm trying to make a change with them.
It's very odd. The restraining part was the odd thing. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time around people who have seizures. I haven't witnessed it a lot, but in any context you've ever seen someone have a seizure, you don't handcuff them and restrain them. You handcuff people in jail when you're afraid that they're going to do something. It's not like this guy was standing up and punching. He was having convulsions on the floor. And they decided to restrain him was a good thing, and then eventually put him in this room and leave him on the floor, and then that was what was going to work. See, it seems like there's a lot of medical personnel. He said they showed that thing. There was like 4 nurses there. They were interviewing. I mean, how many medical personnel do you need to say that someone having a seizure needs medical attention? If I saw someone having a seizure, I wouldn't say, "Wow, you know what we need to do? Restrain them and put them in a room by themselves." Or how? I don't know. Again, I'm not a doctor. Obviously, I understand. Don't before you start commenting, "Well, you a doctor, Mr. Hat?" No, I'm not. But I've never seen anyone react to a seizure saying, "Hey, put them in full restraints, and if that doesn't work, toss them into a room by themselves and leave them there." I don't think that's the diagnosis. I don't think that's what follows the diagnosis of someone having a seizure. Again, I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, feel free to have at me in the comments. For all the doctors out there that say, yes, you should restrain people having seizures and then throw them alone in a room. And people with concussions should go right to sleep. All of this. Again, it seems basic to me, but and apparently, we'll see what the legal system has to say about how basic it seems as well. Thanks, everybody, for checking out Cannabis News. Thank you to Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Thank you to everyone who shares and likes and comments on these videos and uses them to spread the truth about cannabis. You are awesome. Thanks for watching and listening today. We'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.